Creative Assembly recently gave me the opportunity to play the Gamescom demo of Total War 40K. Yep, we are taking it to the far future, a new age for Total War, quite literally, into the era of sci-fi, and it's gonna be quite interesting to see what Creative Assembly can cook up. I should disclose I have worked with Creative Assembly in the past. They have paid me to commentate tournaments for Total War Warhammer multiplayer in both 2 and 3. And yeah, they're not paying me for this video, obviously, but they did give me early access to this demo build. We had like one big battle with Space Marines versus Orcs. There was a campaign slice. They will be taking you through some battle gameplay footage, and I'm just going to kind of live commentate as if it was a multiplayer battle. For those of you guys who don't know, I am Dov Plays. I primarily cover Total War Warhammer multiplayer content. Honestly, I wasn't that excited until I actually got to play the build. After playing the demo, I have to say, it looks pretty interesting. There's definitely a lot of potential here for sure, and the good news is it does feel like a Total War game. But without further ado, let's get on into the cutscene here. We're going to see the Space Marines epically landing their spacecraft here, getting ready to reinforce the guard and enforce the Emperor's will. We're going to see the Librarian in Terminator armor stepping out. He'll be our leader for today. And yeah, very quickly I want to draw your attention to the stats that are going to pop up on the left as I'm starting to select and deploy my units. You'll see that there's the light, medium, and heavy I want to draw your attention to in particular. Essentially, this game, rather than having just 2 size classifications, has 3, which is sort of like infantry. You can think of small or light units, I think they're called. Yeah, the medium is sort of your monstrous infantry, more heavy infantry, even like Space Marines, like lighter vehicles and so forth. And then you've got your heavies, which is big single entity, vehicles and monsters and so forth. So it's going to be interesting. Different units will be good against different types. As you see, I'm kind of selecting through these different ones. They have different specializations where they're good against different types of units. Some are going to be better against heavy, some will be good against light, some will be good all around. And one of the big things about that is that units can carry multiple weapons, right? And previously, I mean, we've seen something like your lances in Medieval 2, right? Or your pikes in Rome 1 or Rome 2 that could carry their primary weapon and then like a sword or a mace as like a backup weapon, right? When they got into pitched melee combat. Well, now these weapons, or these units rather, carry a multitude of weapons, right? You might have a squad of 90 guardsmen, there's 10 specialists, and maybe there's a sergeant, all of whom have different weapon loadouts, right? So even within a unit, have multiple weapons, of course, like the tank, as you'll see when I zoom in here in a second. Warhammer tanks are absolutely covered in guns in every possible place, so there's tons of different weapon profiles. And you'll notice on the stat block there, you've got that little shield icon, and then there's like different weapons you can kind of scroll through. If you click on each one of those, you will be able to see each weapon's profile. I'm not going to do that in this video. I actually will probably do a dedicated stream later today when you're seeing this, or maybe tomorrow, where I actually go through and literally look at every single weapon profile and what all of them sort of mean, at least the ones that I'm able to see in this battle. But yeah, that's very cool. New tech unlocked for Total War, having multiple units carrying, or units carrying multiple different weapon types. So yeah, just going to issue orders for all my Space Marines and then zoom in close, get you some nice cinematic shots of these orcs as they move across and engage the guardsmen. Having a grand old time here, and yeah, it'll be pretty interesting overall, the emphasis on ranged combat. We've seen that in previous Total Wars. Anybody who's played like Empire, Napoleon, Total War knows all about this, but you can see I'm issuing an advance order for all my units. They get some extra speed as they move across. We're going to move into cover here, of course. New mechanic for Total War 40K is cover. Certainly will be something you'll want to take advantage of, especially when you're facing more kind of small arms fire, I would imagine. I don't know, I haven't really studied the interactions too much to see if the heavy firepower really penetrates cover very heavily, but here you can see me calling in some drop pods. I'm calling in some Hell Blasters for more of a range-focused unit, so I'm going to set up a little firing line here. I've got the Dreadnoughts, those are the mechs, single entity mechs here. Pretty potent, kind of good all around. This variant in particular seems quite good. The balance in general is hard to comment too much on because it is sort of a demo build, right? Technically, I mean, they said it was a quote-unquote hard battle, but for any Cold War veteran, like, other than struggling a little bit with the controls, which are not exactly the same as Total War Warhammer for whatever reason, I do think that was a common point of feedback for myself and some of the other content creators that, like, hey, it should probably just have the same controls as Total War Warhammer. I'm sure they're still fine-tuning a few things there. Obviously, everything you see here is a work in progress in general. They're still fine-tuning a number of different things, but yeah, calling in units from reinforcements is certainly a feature. There you see the orc truck festooned with guns, like I was talking about earlier. But yeah, you see me also calling in units, whereas in Total War Warhammer, I always felt like that was a little bit gamey. In Total War 40K, it is literally built into the setting. It's built into the tabletop that you have these reserves. Bring them in through various means. Drop pods is just one of those. Later I'm going to summon in some Terminators who will teleport in, and those you can actually teleport back onto your ship, I guess, is the sort of the fantasy there, if they're getting teleported back onto the ship. I'm not sure if they repair. I didn't really try that, to be honest. Maybe another content creator did, but yeah, you'll see me calling in some of the army abilities. These are super interesting. They felt quite strong. Again, balance here is very far from final. But you see the Storm Boys also with their jump packs jumping up onto my tank, and a little bit of a pickle, but it's got plenty of armor. It can hold up for some time. But yeah, bringing in this airstrike here. These army abilities will be very interesting. I'm wondering, in multiplayer at least, if this is something that you'll have the option to buy, or maybe you'll just get a preset number of them depending on, you know, your faction maybe. But certainly, I mean, there's a lot of potential for multiplayer kind of faction knowledge, balance, skill expression, just even being able to, like, know, you know, which airstrikes are cost effective. If you have the option to buy them, like, which ones should you buy against which factions, right? It sort of adds an extra layer of depth, similar to what you might see with, like, Lores of Magic, right, in Total War Warhammer. Yeah, you can see my chainsaw troops are struggling a little bit, so we're going to throw them out of the frying pan directly into the fire. Go protect that librarian, who is sort of a spellcaster, right? Psionics or Psychers are a thing in 40k. That's their version of magic. But yeah, the Jump Marines there with their chain swords, pretty decent. Space Marines are going to be a very interesting faction in general because they're also low model count. It might force sort of a rethink of the traditional tournament mindset of limiting armies based on a minimum model count. I'm curious to see kind of how the tournament rules scene develops for this game, but in general, yeah, like I said, Space Marines, they're low model count. They have pretty good melee stats, but they're not in good as melee as the Orcs generally. I think of the launch factions, Orcs will be probably the best in melee. Space Marines will be kind of good all around with low model count, sort of elite units. Guard will be probably the best range faction and very much a sort of combined arms. And Eldar will be probably the most mobile faction, I would imagine. We'll have a lot of kind of mobile firepower and ability to reposition very quickly. So we'll see. I mean, I'm not an expert on 40k by any means, but just kind of based on my understanding of the factions. You see me calling in that Warp Vortex there. More AoE damage, of course. And yeah, I mean, the balancing of these abilities, the cost of them, if they are something that you can buy in multiplayer, or even like in campaign, right? I'm assuming that this is something that you buy like a certain number of to have on your fleet for an invasion or whatever. Yeah, I'm curious to see how all that ends up working, but the cost efficiency definitely be very important. But anyway, getting back to commentating on the battle here, setting up a nice firing line. The tank is definitely holding the center right now. Some of my Marines got a little bit beat up, but I was able to kind of skirmish back a little bit there, setting up a nice arc of fire in two different positions, but really trying to focus fire on that Stompa right now. You see that big old Stompa is taking quite a bit of damage. The Marines, though, yeah, that's a lot of boys, a lot of lads, so definitely want to back that away. Bring in some Terminators as well to screen for my Hellblasters, and screen for my Marines as well. Try and get my more ranged-focused troops back to safety, back to cover. And, yeah, we're going to bring in the big orbital laser in just a minute to finish off that Stomper, but tank's also taking a lot of damage here. I think that's the enemy Lord, actually, attacking him, the War Boss. Some knobs here. I'm learning the names. It'll take me a while, but thank goodness, you know, there's only 4 factions worth of names to learn. But just in general, actually, brings me to another sort of game knowledge, right? Because there's so many different weapons, there's so many different units. The different units can even carry different weapons, and like, sure, there'll be different variants of like tanks, right, that have different loadouts. It's going to be a lot to learn, especially for somebody who's not as familiar with 40k in tabletop. Learning which units are good against which units. See the flamers unloading there. That's something at least I know from Total War Warhammer is like, yes, flamers against light infantry. But just in general, I think between the difference positioning, with this being sort of a more shooting-focused Total War game, right? There's a sort of a different skill expression that comes with positioning and high ground and cover, especially now in this game. Will be super interesting to see how that plays out. And then, yeah, like I said, the learning curve, I think, potentially could be higher in this game than in other Total War games, which is already relatively high as far as games go. Just because, like I said, there's so many weapon loadouts, there's so much different stuff, learning what all of it does and how different interactions work. I think that combined with the layer of a little bit of a different micro with it being shooting, Total War, cover, everything I mentioned there, it's definitely going to be interesting to see how the competitive scene develops. I think there's potentially, well, I should say there's a lot of potential for, yeah, like a very high skill ceiling, I think. At the same time, like, will it be easier to learn? Potentially. I mean, like I said, there's only 4 factions at the start compared to Total War Warhammer. If you were to jump in right now in Warhammer 3, there's, like 20 plus. Are we up to 30 factions now? I don't think so. But anyway, there's so many factions to learn, so many units and kind of interactions and matchups to get your handle on. It's almost too much in a way, so it'll be kind of nice to go back to a faction that just has 4 games, but learning this whole new system of positioning, cover, you know, plasma versus laser versus bolter, like the difference between all these different weapon loadouts, and yeah, when you should take what in multiplayer, and you know, the added layer of the airstrikes, like I talked about on top of that. Just so much to learn, and it's got me very excited, honestly. Most importantly, it's just awesome. I mean, look at this carnage. It felt very impactful to play. I feel like maybe there was a couple melee animations that haven't been fully implemented yet. You'll see a little bit on my campaign video, I think. But generally, the unit interactions felt satisfying and impactful. Like, as far as battle gameplay goes, as somebody who's played the series from the absolute very beginning, you know, got my start playing Shogun 1. I was arguably too young to be playing it way back in the day, but it definitely feels like Total War. Like 100%, it's got that Total War DNA, which is what we, as fans of the franchise, are looking for, but it has lots of new stuff that, for me as a Total War veteran, honestly got me really excited to jump in here and learn more about the 40k universe, really just dive headfirst into it. You know, hopefully scrap with some of you all watching it. By no means is this a purchase recommendation. I mean, it's still super, super early. There's plenty of things to keep your eye on. I personally am somebody that was burned pretty badly by launch of Total War Warhammer 3. It was a lot of issues on the game on launch. Basically until Immortal Empires, it was more or less early access game. So, you know, I am very hopeful that the launch of 40k goes much better, but it is, you know, Creative Assembly's track record that we need to be wary of these things. But, you know, all that aside, for my experience that I had with this demo, I definitely enjoyed it, and I'm really looking forward to, yeah, playing more. I want more, which is a good thing for sure. Like, I'm very eager to get my hands on early access, full version of the game, which probably won't happen for quite some time. It does seem like there's still quite a bit to be done, but the foundation they've built so far is very promising, and it's got me excited for more. So hopefully you feel the same. If you don't, though, that's completely fine. Regardless of how you feel, let me know down in the comments below what you're feeling about Total War 40k. Are you excited to jump in, scrap it out on a launch day tournament? Are you not even going to touch multiplayer, but maybe you'll, you know, let the boy watch a little bit? Regardless, we're happy to have you. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.